Matthew 9:2. Behold, they brought to him a man sick of the palsy. But I know he's in Capernaum because that's what's mentioned in Mark. So actually, that's what I'm going to start with. Mark 2. And again he entered into Capernaum, and after some days, as it was noised that he's in his house, they brought to him a man sick of palsy. Okay, so I'm just going to wait. All the introduction has to come first. Where he is, what he's doing. Luke 17? It came to pass on a certain day as he was teaching. There were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which would come of every town of Galilee, and the Lord was present to him. Behold, okay, so Luke 17 has to come before anything in Matthew. And I think Luke is mixed, but some of Mark comes first. Again, he entered into Capernaum after some days. Came to pass on a certain day. So after some day, first I'm definitely putting this sentence in Mark by itself. And again, he entered into Capernaum. Okay, so after that, it says in Mark, after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. After some days. It was noised that he was in the house. After some days, it was noised he was in the house. So he's there for a little while, and then the people gather around him. So, and it came to pass on a certain day as he was teaching. So he must have been teaching when there was a gathering of people. So, it came to pass, I could say, and it came to pass after some days, it was noised that he was in the house as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and doctors. No, I'm going to have to put all of verse 2, because that continues on with the explanation. Immediately many were gathered together, insomuch that there was no room to receive them, no, not so much as about the door, and he preached the word to them. He preached the word to them. That can be mixed with, it came to pass on a certain day as he was teaching. Actually, as he was teaching. It came to pass on a certain day. It came to pass, after some days, it was noised that he was in the house. That's what I'm going to have to do. I have to go with, and it came to pass, not just on a certain day he was teaching, but I have to put the gathering. It was noised that he was in the house, and immediately men are gathered together. And on a certain day, and then I can do that. And then Mark 2:3, and they came to him, bringing one sick of palsy. But I could say and then skip back to Luke and say, on a certain day, as he was teaching, there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was present to heal them. And behold, they come to him bringing one sick of palsy. That's what I can do. Okay, which means that I'm going to stop after it came to pass. It came to pass after some days. So that's what I'll do. It came to pass. And again, it came to Capernaum, and it came to pass. I'll stop there with Luke, and I'll continue on with Mark. Because again, Matthew just waits until the man sick of palsy is brought in. So this is just Mark still. It came to pass after some days, Capernaum. Oh, wait a minute. In Mark, this after some days is explaining when he came to Capernaum. Because this is how it reads. And again he came into Capernaum, after some days. And it was noised that he was in the house. Yeah, so this after some days is not that it was noised. It was that he came into the house after some days. So maybe I should put as it is, and then save the and it came to pass after some days. I could say it reads, and again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it came to pass, it was noised that he was in the house. Yeah, that's good. And there's no mixing if I do that. That's good. So now it reads, just as it does from Mark, and again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it came to pass, it was noised. There, I'll just continue after it came to pass, it was noised that he was in the house. I'm still saving on a certain day as he was teaching, there were people there. This explanation is setting up a scene for why they had to lower the man from the roof, which makes it kind of awkward if I save this next sentence from Luke, on a certain day as he was teaching. I might have to reorder that. Instead of saving that for so long, yeah, I could put it, and immediately many were gathered together, then maybe I could put this, on a certain day as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was present to heal them. Or I could put Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem, then go back to Mark, insomuch that there was no room to receive them, no, not so much as about the door, and he preached the word. Oh, well, that might be saying there's a whole lot of Pharisees and doctors, not just that there were many people in general. If I put both of them together, any way I do it, it's going to seem as if I'm leaving one out. Okay, the problem is that as I have it now. Immediately many were gathered together. That's fine. And it sets up the scene. There were so many that they couldn't fit anyone through the door. But then I have to put in, on a certain day there were also doctors and Pharisees, and the power of the Lord was present to heal them, and they lowered the man through the roof. So I could say that, I guess it would infer that on all these days, when the multitudes were gathered, and even until the man was lowered from the roof, there was no room at the door. Or I could say it was noised he was in the house, and on a certain day as he was teaching, there were Pharisees and doctors, and the power of the Lord was present. And then I could go into immediately were gathered, insomuch there was no room to receive them. No, because I don't want to change the meaning from this verse in Mark. And it came to pass, it was noise that he was in the house, and it goes right into the next verse, and immediately they were gathered together, insomuch there was no room to receive them. Except in Luke it clearly says that this must have been for a few days, because on a certain day, well no, this is going to be a certain day of the entire ministry. It could be. This could be that very day that it was noised and the group gathered together. Yeah. There's no indication that this is a certain day of him teaching at this house. He could have only been there for one day. I could just continue the phrase from Luke, it came to pass, and then keep going on a certain day, then put, it was noise that he was in the house, and immediately many were gathered together. Or I could put this introductory phrase from Luke first and say, it came to pass on a certain day he entered into Capernaum after some days. It's kind of weird, but it would be fine for everything later on. And it was noise that he was in the house, and immediately many were gathered together, insomuch there was no room to receive them, no, not so much as at the door. And he preached the word to them. As he was teaching, there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting, and then the man was lowered. That would work. Because how I have it now, and again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it came to pass, it was noise that he was in the house. And then if I put later on a certain day, that would add the idea that he's in Capernaum for a while, for a few days. And that's just not known. It's not known, and I don't want to add that supposed passage of time if it's not there. I wouldn't want to maybe even add a passage of a few days if there was no few days that he spent there. So I think I might have to do it like this. Put this passage from Luke first. And it came to pass on a certain day, back to Mark, he entered into Capernaum after some days. That fear of mine of possibly adding a few extra days where it's not clear those days were, I don't think it's founded. Mark does move very quickly from his arrival in the house to the gathering of the people. Mark 2, and again he entered into Capernaum after some days. So days came and went. He's now in Capernaum, and it was noised that he was in the house, and immediately many were gathered together, insomuch there was no room to receive them. However, Luke gives a small hint that shows there may have been a passage of time when Jesus is in this house before this event of the man being lowered from the roof takes place. Luke 5:17, and it came to pass on a certain day as he was teaching that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was present to heal them. And behold, a man was brought and lowered from the ceiling. So, how long does it take for people to get to Galilee from Jerusalem? A few days. It takes a little while. I think it's around like 70 miles away. And if people are there from all Judea, all Galilee, and Jerusalem, unless you're going to guess that those people from Jerusalem were already there waiting for him, you'd have to say it must have taken a few days to arrive. The fear that I have of this sentence structure, and again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it came to pass on a certain day, it was noised that he was in the house. That possibility of saying after some days he entered, then on a certain day that he was there, it was noised, meaning some time passed, it may be true. Some day, on a certain day after he entered into the house, meaning some time may have passed, may have actually happened in order for people to arrive. Especially if he is teaching and this man is brought on a bed from somewhere. We don't know where he's from, but it makes sense that it's not exactly the very day that he arrives at his house, the man's lowered from the bed. Where did he come from? How long did it take to get there? Do they have to make some kind of plans? Do they have to call people in together? It's going to take some time to walk with that man on a bed to the house that Jesus is in. So I think it's okay to possibly add this passage of time that Jesus is at this house. To say from Mark, he entered into Capernaum after some days. Then from Luke, it came to pass on a certain day, it was noised he was in the house. I understand that news travels fast in third world countries, but I doubt that the day he arrived, people from Galilee, Judea, and Jerusalem gathered around his house, and the crowd was so thick that no one could get in the first day. It's possible, but it's unlikely, especially for someone to be carried in a bed some distance for plans to be made for him to be brought and lowered from the roof. So I do eventually leave that sentence structure and I move on to something else that leaves the timing available to be immediate, but it's so awkward and it reads so strangely that even though it doesn't add any possibility of time passed, it's more of a problem when reading. It's so strange when reading through that I think it's better this way with the possible addition of time. So I'm going to stick with this sentence structure. And again he entered into Capernaum after some days. And it came to pass on a certain day, it was noised that he was in the house. I could show you the rest of my going back and forth between different ideas, but it's clear enough. That other sentence structure was strange. I'll just read it to you. And again it came to pass on a certain day, he entered into Capernaum after some days. That's what I finished with. That was what I had kept. On a certain day, he entered into Capernaum after some days. That's too weird. I'm gonna keep it like this. It flows so much nicer, and I don't think it creates a significant problem. I don't like how it reads right now. I'm just gonna have to leave it like it is. It's gonna sound weird one way or another. It's just gonna sound weird. Or I could just choose one over the other. I could just cut out after some days. No, I can't do that. I'll just leave it as it is.